Meghan Markle has been criticised for launching a new range of jam and dog biscuits on the same day as Princess Kate's return to the spotlight. Is it true or is it false? Now, she does have form, doesn't she? She tried to upstage Princess Charlotte's 6th birthday.
Yeah, I have.
Which was pretty embarrassing,
I have
really.
to admit, trying to upstage a child's birthday, I thought was an act of desperation. But I was surprised that this happened, you know. Although, am I surprised that it happened? It is Meghan Markle. But it's one of those things that, yes, she brought out, I think it was dog biscuits, jam, and there was a couple of other things, and it was all done through one of Prince Harry's polo friends, which I was like, well, here we go, this is how it starts. But, you know, it just annoyed me.
She's almost like a sort of 18th century market hawker from Petticoat Lane.
Yeah, but this is the thing. She's now just become like a bargain bin basement kind of person, hasn't she? She's just trying to sell you stuff. You know, it's gone from being this kind of we want to influence things and we want to kind of lead on major topics and social injustice to here's some jam I want to sell. It is talk about a fall from grace.
Do you know, I discovered the other day that Spur, the book by Prince Harry, and they'll be pleased about this, it's the most recycled book in the history of publishing.
That's incredible, because I know at one point that was really struggling for sales at one point, if I remember rightly. But no, I have to admit, I didn't watch Trooping the Colour, but from what I hear, Princess Catherine was quite remarkable from what I was told. But,
do you know, Tom, the big problem with Trooping the Colour? It's really boring.
It does go on a bit. And
I've been a few times, you think, all right, I've had enough now.
You saw Prince Louis. I think he was happily dancing away, wasn't he? He always steals the show. Every single time.
He literally just doesn't care, does he?
What is he, 4, 5,
Four or
something like
five,
that?
yeah.
I mean, he's just so sweet and clearly enjoying every moment of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I think he fell asleep just before or pretended to fall asleep just before the flyover and then came straight back up.
I've got to be honest, though, James. I mean, the Trooping the Colour, Princess Catherine did cheer it up, though, didn't she?
Well, yeah, and look, regardless of your views on the monarchy or Trooping the Colour and its boringness...
Hang on. Are you a Republican?
I am.
Are you?
Oh!
Get out.
It's okay. So, I want to understand this. As somebody who's a Republican, and not an American Republican, one that wants to
let me make that very clear. They are two very different things.
That's right. One that wants to abolish the monarchy. Do you like Meghan or dislike her?
I honestly don't care. I think the question...
Well, that'll be helpful for the show.
The question speaks volumes. Has Trooping the Colour lost its lustre if it's getting upstaged by dog biscuits? You know, the best argument for the royal family, as someone who doesn't agree with them, it's a soap opera for people to enjoy, but amongst the very, very wealthy. If you neither like the royal family nor soap operas, like me, there's not really a lot in it for you.
Well,
I'd rather have the dog biscuits.
Hang on a second. We've been watching these trials in America with President Trump and indeed Hunter Biden and saying, well, the problem with America is all these political appointments to the judiciary. The fact that we've got a royal family means that doesn't happen in Britain.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can have a separation of powers without political influence on the judicial.
How do you have non-political judicial appointments?
Well, for example,
without a royal family.
Well, for example, you could put it to a cross-party or a committee of people.
That'll just be a load of lefties.
Yeah.
You know full well. All that'll happen.
Are you seriously suggesting at the moment that the King appoints the Supreme Court justices?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. But he's part of a non-political process. But anyway.
But you can still have that without the King being.
But I'll tell you what I'd love to find out. In terms of being a Republican, is it because of the soap opera? Is it because of the privilege? Or is it because you just think a democratically elected president would be better?
It's a point of principle. I mean, It's the idea that just because someone has been born, that's their only achievement in life, that they are entitled to, as the song suggests, reign over us. That, to me, has never sat right. And look, it doesn't cost you a lot of money, but you're still contributing a couple of quid a year to their upkeep. And I just fundamentally disagree with it.
Do you think that Meghan... I appreciate you don't care that much about the royal family, but do you think Meghan did have an opportunity to improve the royal family? Because she is a bit different. You know, she comes with a different group of, if you like, supporters and fans. I'm surprised at how unpopular she is amongst parts of the country, and I'm surprised that she's become this figure that you sort of have to have an opinion on. I come on a show like this, which I really enjoy, talking about politics. Like, what do you think of Meghan Markle? Don't care, mate. You know, but I've been asked that.
We ought not to care if she's actually stepped back.
Yeah, that's
Prince Harry.
Point.
Then there ought to be an argument that we're allowed.
But the thing that James loves most about this is that this is a better studio than my usual one, isn't it?
You've been promoted since last week. Admittedly, only last week.
Well, the other one was built for me, and this one was built for Piers Morgan. But anyway,
no expense spared.
It's okay, Pete. Has Meghan Markle launched a load of dog biscuits? True or false?
It's true.
It's absolutely true. OK, so to James, a policeman in West London has been sacked after deliberately hitting a cow with a car, not once but twice. Is it true or is it false?
I'm going to take umbrage with it. I think he's been taken back from frontline duties, which I think is probably about the right punishment for striking a cow with a police escort.
I want to ask you this question. I mean, I've worked in Parliament, but you've worked in government. I mean, how is it possible that the whole of Surrey Police thought about this for 2 hours and nobody went, don't run over the cow, it's a bad idea?
Well, I genuinely don't know what else. I mean, look, I don't think it was the right thing to do, but genuinely, what do they do? Do they have the equipment on hand to deal with this? Where is the nearest? If you're at night, you're a Surrey copper doing your beat at night, where's your nearest tranquiliser gun for dealing with a rogue calf?
Because
I'm not sure.
Well, hang on a second.
Or you find a vet.
I'm not sure the police... Well, that's exactly the point. I'm not sure the police force are the kind of people who should be dealing with errant cows. Surely that is... Genuinely, I don't know. I don't know whose job that is.
Pete, I'm not the greatest expert on dairy farming. Surprisingly enough.
You shocked me.
From what I can see, what you do is you get a bucket with some food and just go click, 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 and it just follows you. I mean, look, to be honest with you, I understand the need to protect the public. I understand that the animal was doing damage, but I cannot believe that after 2 hours deliberation, the best idea they could come up with is hit it with a van.
Well, twice. Twice. It's not once, but twice.
And it was a bad video.
I think it was more of a saloon car, if we're honest, rather than a full van. That might have been a sacking offence.
But it was quite a sad video to watch.
Yes, it is. The video is incredibly shocking, and I think that's why we've had the reaction that we've had. But the experts are now saying that they actually did the right thing by hitting it, which I do not understand, because I'm with you. I don't understand dairy farming or cows, surprisingly. But the thing that has annoyed me the most about this story is the fact that I'm supposed to care about it. And the grand scheme of things that have happened in the last 2 weeks, this is not one of the things I'd really care about. One thing that has annoyed me the most is this has got wall-to-wall coverage. Like on every major newspaper, it's been on every major TV channel.
Give the people what they want, Pete.
Yeah, but again, there are some significant things that have happened that have not had this amount of attention.
There's two things, Pete.
It's staggering to me.
Pete, I can tell that you studied political science, whereas I did journalism. Everybody knows an animal story does well. But also, you know the reason that people care. It's because there's a shocking video.
Yeah.
It's not because... if fundamentally people were worried about cows being abused, then they wouldn't be going to Burger King and McDonald's.
This is what a few people on X, on Twitter, have said, haven't they? Saying, like,
without being funny, we string them upside down and slit their throats. Right? I mean, that is also not very pleasant.
And think how many times we've done that since this started going viral. Exactly. How many animals have actually gone through that process? Just because it's not all over social media.
The other thing that makes it difficult, we deliberately breed these animals to have lots of beef on them, which is why when you hit it with a car, it's not as bad as twice. I mean, what made me laugh was they hit the bloody thing at about 30 miles an hour. They went, it's got a scratch. Yeah. Oh, you would think so.
But for me, it's been this kind of great moral panic over this story that I just find exhausting. I was like, as soon as it happened, I flicked onto Twitter and I was like, oh, here we go. Here comes all the virtue signaling. Here comes all of this stuff. And I was like, I'm not being funny, but, kids are being stabbed in the street and you don't seem to care. A cow gets hit by a car and everybody loses their mind. That is really a problem.
I'll say one thing, Tom. I have noticed this before, that sometimes we, in this country, are more bothered about animal abuse than we are child poverty. I don't think Pete makes a poor point there.
I think he makes a great point, and I think it's amplified by social media. It's amplified by Twitter. We see this all the time, don't we? And I get that people love animals. I love animals.
Fried or boiled?
And that depends which animal you're talking about.
I'll tell you what, I remember...
Boiled meat? Where do you live in?
I walked
from the north.
I walked up to a group of vegans and I went, I love animals. They're delicious. They went wild. But I'll tell you who I agree with. I agree with the pub landlord, Al Murray, who says, I do not hate the cow. It's made of beef and I'm hungry. Right? Don't hate it. I'm not got anything against it.
I do get hungry walking past fields of sheep or fields of cows, which I think is unusual.
Yeah,
I think that's unusual.
Absolutely.
But we're a nation of animal lovers, but I totally agree. We need to recognise all the various kinds of terrible things that happen.
I think the other
balance.
I think it's a sense of perspective that
I think it's worth. I mean, let's move on now. But I think the other point is, to be fair, we all know that the police are massively under strength and massively under budget and really struggling. And I suppose after 2 hours of 5 police officers, or whatever it was, they did have to do something. But anyway, James, and I think you might have detected this within the question.
Is it true?
So I think what it boils down to is this. I'll read it again carefully.
Right.
A policeman in West London has been sacked for deliberately hitting a cow with a car. Is it true or is it false?
I'm going to say false because he's not been sacked. He's been relieved from frontline duties.
Is the correct answer. It's absolutely false.
Tried a trick question there.
Now, that is the quality of the guests we've got these days. Right, OK, on to Tom. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has demanded to be involved in the next leaders' debate. Is it true or is it false?
I think, following the latest opinion poll, and it was one opinion poll,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think. There was a whole range going on all the time, but there was one opinion poll. Was it the YouGov poll?
It was a YouGov poll,
Which
yeah.
put reform above the Conservatives. And so, therefore, the message went out, this is the new opposition, and Nigel Farage said, I want to be in the next debate. So I have a suspicion this is... Well, do we jump straight to answering the question? It's a very short show, isn't it? It's sort of 5 questions.
Right. I'm going to teach you a little bit about television. This is what's called a device, right? It's a televisual device to talk about the news, right? The scoring is not as important.
It's not a new idea, right?
I love the fact you ain't got the concept. But actually, look, let me ask you this, James. How easy is it when you are one of the lesser parties to get your voice heard during a general election?
I would say generally pretty difficult, but Farage is a completely different character. He's now bestrode the British political scene, whether you like it or not, and I don't, but he has very effectively for 20 years. I think that the answer to your question would be true in any point in the last 20 years. I think it would be true if you asked him, does he want to take part in the French presidential election debates? I think it'd be true if he said to him, he will go to the opening of an envelope, that bloke, and certainly if the opening of the envelope is on telly, he'll be there.
Yes.
That's his shtick.
Yes, but hang on a second, right? So, if we go through all the party leaders, you've got the quite stale Rishi and Keir events. You've got the Liberal Democrats doing what they always do, which is, and I'm not being critical, desperately trying to get in, do a stunt in order to get there. And, and Farage is trying to do the same thing. The big problem is we have a 2-party system and there are 8 parties.
Yeah, the difference this time around is I would say that the incumbent party, the government, people have almost stopped listening to them. When you get in polls, I don't think it will necessarily pan out as more seats for Reform. In fact, I know it won't. But one poll put them past. The Liberal Democrats are running an interesting campaign. People are prepared to have a look at us, I would suggest, in a way that they weren't, certainly in 2015 and maybe not in 2017 and 2019. The Greens have got a double leader thing. That's quite interesting.
Sorry, I'm just going to stop this show right now. Right. I don't know whether my producer meant this, but he said, can you ask him about Ed Davies' love of water sports?
Well,
was that deliberate?
Interesting word.
It's a family show, so I'll keep it.
No, stop. He's not doing lots of it at the moment. He has been to some water parks. He has not
He enjoys a paddleboard as much as the next man. But you're absolutely right. Look, we're not the Liberal Democrats. Obviously, I would say this. I think they're running a brilliant campaign, but it's not rocket science. You go there, you get Ed doing something interesting, build some sandcastles, fall off a paddleboard, and then you go. You're always in a Tory-facing seat. You say the Tory government have let you down, and the Liberal Democrats are the only people that can win here. It's a very, very effective message for what matters to the Lib Dems, which is local seats.
Let me ask you this, Pete, because just to move this on ever so slightly. A lot of these political parties, not a lot, all of these political party leaders do want to go out and do eye-catching stuff. Yeah. The big problem is these milkshake throwers, these rock throwers, these rubbish throwers make it very, very hard to do it. I feel incredibly sorry for political party leaders who find it unable to do walkabouts, and I believe it's something that's been very, very damaging.
I think it is disturbing. I think it is dangerous, and I don't think we're taking it seriously enough.
Yes.
I completely agree with what we've talked about in the past.
That it's terrorism.
That I wouldn't, to a degree, I don't necessarily would use that word, but I do think these.
Well, I'll tell you what I'd say. And people have criticised me for saying this. I believe the reason they're throwing milkshakes is they don't have Semtex.
Yes,
I genuinely,
I completely agree.
Because I draw a line from throwing a milkshake to acts of terrorism, because the point is, when you have an opportunity to engage with a politician, what you attempt to do is stop him talking.
Yeah.
And I find that offensive.
Yeah, I agree with the concept of what you're saying, but what I will say is that these aren't just attacks on individuals. This is an attack on democracy.
Correct.
It
itself.
really is.
Correct.
It really is, because what you're trying to do is removing a voter's opportunity to listen to somebody that they may want to vote for. That is the point of it.
And it's creeped.
And
It's
it
crept
has,
and
and it
crept
has.
every
And
other
Well,
This is
I'll tell you where I think
Andre
it
is right.
started. I'll tell you where I think it started. I think it started with Steve Bray. So you've got to remember something about Steve Bray. First of all, I've no problem with the colourful gear. I've no problem with him hating Brexit. I've no problem with him campaigning. And actually, British politics has a great tradition of loonies sort of wandering around. The problem is what he's actually doing, and I say this as somebody who's in TV and radio, what he wants to do is prevent channels like ours broadcasting the opinions of people he disagrees with. Yeah. That's what he's trying to do. Shout over some people and not shout over others. And I think it's damaging, because I would rather hear something I disagree with than just drown them out.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, no one knows what's in those things that they're throwing. It's really scary. And I mean, maybe I'm thinking Count Binface walks around with a bin on his head. Is that?
Are you proposing?
All candidates
walk around with bins.
Are you proposing?
It's radical stuff.
Are you proposing that we should stick a bin on Rishi's head to say about him?
I think if it's for one, it's for all.
Mind you, of course, the one point about Rishi is, whilst he never got milkshaked, it was God himself that threw water at him and drowned him.
Let us not forget that we've had 2 MPs assassinated.
Yes.
In recent
yeah.
history.
Yeah.
Let's also not forget that just last week there was a bomb unit sent to a Tory MP's office. We've had MP's offices suspected of burning down. Like, we talk about this, it's just a milkshake. And it irritates me no end when I see commentators and people on these kind of shows just kind of say, oh, isn't it funny? Or, oh, it's just a milkshake.
Yeah.
It's not just a milkshake. You know, we've had people actually die.
Yeah.
But why?
Yeah,
James,
One
absolutely
second. What I do want to say, though, is my biggest fear is that MPs become less accessible.
Oh, well,
I think that's already happened.
Some are standing down. We know some are standing down because of the intimidation.
You know, the idea of having a police presence at a MP's surgery, that you're just going to put people off from going. You know, going to your MP is often the last resort for a lot of people.
And it's your absolute basic democratic right.
And it's your basic right, and that is being taken away from you. And
well, the sad thing is, Pete, the sad thing is, a lot of these politicians want that accessibility to remain open. I mean, I always say to people, and people watching and listening can try this out, you see those fearsome-looking police officers at the door of Parliament, and you walk up to them and say, hello, I'm here to talk to my MP. They'll go, have you got an appointment? And then you'll go, no, and they'll go, come in.
Yeah.
And actually, that is because, now, we all know that the police, for obvious reasons, would like that not to be the case. But that is the case because MPs insist on it. Anyway, we'd slightly digress. So has the Reform leader, Nigel Farage, demanded to be in the debates? Is it true or is it false?
Listening to that wording, I think that is true.
OK, don't worry, they're not all tricks.
Not all tricks.
It is absolutely true.
That was The Woke That Was. Continues after the break.
Hello and welcome back to That Was The Woke That Was. We're going through all the biggest stories and we've got a belter of a panel tonight. We've got from the Free Speech Union, Tom Harris, Nick Clegg's former advisor, James McGory, and of course, the gorgeous political strategist, Pete Barnes. And we're going to go straight to Pete. Pete, did you like that?
I did. It's like the old days.
I think you missed that introduction.
I do. It's the only compliment I ever used to get in the week, and you took it away from me.
I wouldn't mind. You lost all the weight, and then we stopped being nice.
Yeah.
What do you have to do to get gorgeous in your intro?
You don't want to know. You don't want to know.
OK, so in China, thank God we've got China back. In China, if your social credit score gets too low, authorities will lock your bank accounts. Is it true or is it false?
I think that might be something, again, of a trick question, because it sounds like the kind of thing that you would expect the sort of all-authoritarian Chinese state to be doing. But I've never heard about this story because, to be honest, I genned up on the general election, not China's latest authoritarian policies. So absolutely no idea.
OK.
Is it China or the UK?
Well,
because we have a similar system here, actually, a social credit system. We're shutting people's bank accounts.
We do have... There is a lot of monitoring of people going on, isn't there? And whilst we have a go at China, you are right in saying that debanking has been a problem in this country as well.
Go back to Nigel Farage. That's what happened last year. There was a huge hoo-ha about it. And go back to the Free Speech Union, where I work, we were debanked by PayPal.
Yes,
Really?
We were the canary in the mine, really, for that.
Yeah.
And then
So
out
explain,
of that...
just give us a second. I appreciate that this is a bit of a fun Saturday night show, but just explain exactly what happened.
Well, I remember because I was going swimming.
Well, the swimming's not relevant.
I clocked off for the day, got a text in, said, we have a problem. The payments aren't going through. No notice had been given.
Wow.
And we just, a third of our income was meant to come from
Well,
PayPal.
now let me tell you what's being said in my ear by a producer who has listened to what you've had to say, and his question was, what swimming pool was it?
Just around the corner from here. London Bridge Guys Hospital, just at the
How is
bottom.
that relevant? but it is a worrying thing. What is the position with the Free Speech Union now?
So what Toby Young did is he did the media rounds and sort of said, look, this has happened to us. No reason other than it was there's a document called the Acceptable Use Policy, which apparently we'd breached. And within a week, we were back up and running because Toby was able to make such a song and dance about it and make such an amount of noise.
I'll tell you one thing, James. It really worries me with all these big media platforms because what we can all say in a capitalist society is, well, all right, if you can't shop at Tesco, shop at Asda or whatever. But there's a lot of these tech firms where if they throw you out, you really do have serious problems. I mean, if political parties, as an example, if they're not able to use YouTube, you can sit around and say, oh, other platforms are available. Let's be honest. Right, it is a problem, isn't it?
And just because other platforms are available doesn't mean that people should be forced to use one or the other. The whole point of them being available is that they're available to everybody.
Yes.
What I would say is we do ask them to do quite a tricky line. Now, sometimes they get it wrong, and sometimes, like that case, seems to me to be completely over the top, right? But it is quite right that we say that they shouldn't be able to show images of, let's say, sexual abuse or raise money for terrorists across the world. So we are asking them to do some censorship for us, and quite rightly. And I think we're all agreed there are some things we don't want to do. So I will say they've got a tricky line. But I also agree that by and large, your instinct should be, unless people are doing real harm, they should be allowed to speak on whatever platform they like, regardless of their views.
Tom, here is the real problem here with a lot of these tech companies. And I appreciate we're talking about the Chinese government, but I think the wider issue affects everybody. Which laws do they comply with? Because most of them are in America, which actually is probably quite good
or
news
the
for
EU.
Us. Yes.
Digital services. Yeah.
But if you know, the Afghan government, as an example, says, well, we want people who've committed blasphemy reported to us, what does a tech company do?
Well, they are caught between a rock and a hard place because I think we saw this with Elon Musk recently in Australia. And information around that, and I think he stood up to it in the end.
Yeah, he did. He's actually managed to get them to back off. But it's funny when a multi-billionaire tells you to back off. People back off.
There's a different power dynamic. There's a different power dynamic.
Yeah.
But I mean, there is no easy answer to that, Andre. It's absolutely dependent on the situation, and also it's changing all the time.
Because of course the other element of it is, and I don't like a nasty dictatorial regime, but I guess you could say, well, hang on a second, this is our country, we have laws in this country, say Afghanistan or Iran or somewhere like that. Why should a foreign company choose our level of morality?
But it's when a block law reaches into a sovereign nation and determines what's allowed to happen there. So the government in that nation could say, this is fine. But because there's a bigger block law, whether it's the EU, whether it's something else, an NGO, some kind of organisation that operates across boundaries, suddenly you're right. Who is in charge? Who is making the decision?
Just to shift it off this point, but still on topic, is let's not forget that the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau used emergency powers laws to freeze the bank accounts of protesters that he didn't like, of the Freedom Truckers.
That's the Chinese social credit.
That is the prime example of this.
By the way, we don't have criticism of Justin Trudeau. Why not?
He's Canada's first black Prime Minister.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
We spend too much time together.
Exactly right. I love the way you've now nicked my joke. But okay.
You just nick all my points from the green room.
Absolutely right. Well, look, somebody's got to do the work. Anyway, James, has China decided that it's going to lock bank accounts? Is it true or is it false?
I would say false, but I don't know why.
I'm afraid it's absolutely and unfortunately true. OK, so on to top. It's rare that somebody gets this question.
Should have read the papers.
Right. How many times do I have to say, you have not been sent the questions in advance? You have not been sent the questions in advance.
I can assure people by saying if I did, I'd get them right. I mean, I've really proven that for you.
Okay, let's try and get a few wrong now. Okay, so, Tom, they just blow away the myth. Blow away the myth. Tom, history lecturers at Liverpool University have been told to teach students that whiteness and heterosexuality are a problem. Is it true or is it false?
I think this is one of many stories like this across universities in this country, where there's decolonisation ideas, anti-racism, all of these ideas, which all sound great. Certainly anti-racism does, until you get underneath it.
No, they're not all great. I mean, I'm not against having a colony. I can have my own colony.
But what this really means is that people are not allowed to teach things they've taught for a very long time, and professors often don't have control of their own course anymore. So they get audited.
What I don't understand is this. I think there's a really simple proposition here, which is the reason that humans do so well and the reason that we're the most advanced civilization that the Earth's ever seen is because we're able to pass on information from generation to generation. That means that good, decent, moral, intelligent people in the past were less enlightened than us.
Well, Greek...
Right? And that is just a fact. And so ultimately, why did, as an example, slavery disappear? Because after a few generations, people realised that it was wrong. By the way, it hasn't disappeared right across the world. But I can't understand why you would go back in history and say, you know, as an example, by today's standards, Winston Churchill made some racist comments. Yeah, OK. But, you know, he was no more racist than my grandmother, right? And, you know, time moves on.
And he was the greatest English hero, voted again and again and again till about 5 minutes ago, which is another problem. This has all happened so fast. And we don't realise that we do learn. So the Greek philosophers have just been...
The other thing is about the Bengal famine. I mean, it did principally happen because it was being blockaded by Japan and we didn't have enough ships to move food in. But OK, fair enough.
On the question, though, the thing that really gets me is we always have a go at students. This isn't the students. This is the administrations of the university. These are supposed to be the adults and the grown-ups in the room that are either encouraging it or are kind of turning a blind eye to what is a major problem. You know, one of the ways that, you know, you really want to take control of something, you take control of the kind of academia level. Because once you do that, you disseminate your ideas within the population and then they take them out into the workforce and into society. That is what we're seeing with this woke stuff and all the rest of it. Once you capture the academia, you've captured everything.
It's a nuclear reactor.
It is.
Right, so look, if you look at political correctness in the 1980s, to be fair, the worst excesses were curbed, and actually, some good came out of it. Racist language disappeared. People were less abused as a result. Are we worrying too much about some of this decolonisation in universities?
I'll tell you what I do think. We're not giving students enough credit, and I include students in that themselves. But everyone in this argument, regardless of what side of the debate you appear to be on, always seems to come back to the same thing, which is, you couldn't possibly tell students this controversial view from one side or the other. I'm a believer in freedom of speech. I'd imagine you are as well. Teach people, look, there's context, and context is important, but allow people to hear from a wide range of voices and make their own mind up. This idea that students are these delicate flowers who couldn't possibly be exposed to a view on the left or a view on the right is, in my view, nonsense.
So first of all, actually, I think that's a fair defence, and I agree with you. I think the big problem is there is a concern that they're prohibited from listening to one side.
Well, that's what I mean. People are being back. Look, I think you'll get both sides. And this is what I find really interesting as someone who's a liberal who considers themselves in the middle of the political debate, but is also a passionate defender of freedom of speech. I think you'll find people from both wings of the more extreme arguments on the left and right saying, my views are banned from being put into campuses. This speaker's been banned. That person's been banned. I don't like what they're teaching on this course. I don't like the fact that this course has gone. And what I think is, why don't you let the students decide? Bums on seats.
I mean, I'll tell you what I found extraordinary. When my old college, Royal Holloway, banned Claire Fox from speaking on campus, it wasn't because she defended the IRA's right to blow up Warrington. It's because she'd retweeted Ricky Gervais. And you think, oh, come on, at least ban her for a good reason.
I completely agree with James, but my point is, if you look at the number of people that get banned from one side compared to the other, I think that's where you've got a problem.
Well,
you never really get a controversial trans activist getting banned, but you get a gender critical one are always banned. Yeah. That's the problem. I completely agree that we should listen to both sides of an argument, but when one side is continually shutting down the other
and saying the debate's over,
you will get people on the other side of the argument from yourselves saying that they don't get enough airtime. They have people banned, that they're not allowed to protest on campuses. Look, both sides, that says to me, someone in the middle.
James, listen, look. In fact, I'm going to move to you, Tom. James is skillful there because, look, first of all, what he's saying is completely right. Yeah. And both sides do complain, but one side does get banned and the other side actually really largely doesn't.
Yeah, and we actually, unfortunately, the Free Speech Union, we live that every single day.
Is there evidence of proof?
We do. I do the data. I do the data, and 40% of our cases are essentially gender-critical people being shut down. We have very few trans rights activists.
But I do want to put the question to you, Tom, that I put to James. Is it as serious a problem as we think it is?
Yes. I think the fact that over the last 2 weeks we have had university after university, and this is just before the Higher Education Freedom of Speech Act comes in.
So it's all going to become illegal in about 3 weeks' time?
In England, it will become illegal. If that act gets activated on the 1st of August, it will become illegal to shut down academic freedom.
I'm really sorry to ask you this, because you've said this before on certain shows. If this gets activated, is that deliberate?
Well, it's a bit like, and obviously we don't support the hate crime in Scotland, which from the Free Speech Union perspective, but that took 3 years to activate, even though it had the King's assent, or the Queen's assent in that case. This has had the King's assent, but it does
And so what will effectively happen is that hopefully in September, when students come back, any attempt to prohibit academic freedom will become illegal.
And there will be recourse.
I mean, you're not going to go to prison for it, but it will still be illegal.
You've got a process you can go through to say, actually, what you have done is illegal. And, it's not going to allow anyone to say absolutely anything, because that's never the case. And certainly, if there's sort of vetoes, hecklers' vetoes, where people shut things down and don't allow debate to take place in the name of free speech, that won't be allowed.
I'm going to say this, that I've got a friend of mine who's hosting a candidates debate for the general election, just one of these nice little local things, and a group of people want to protest about Palestine. And do you know what annoys me most about it? Because this event might need to be cancelled. Now, they could just come in, sit down and ask their question. But they choose not to do it. It's so frustrating.
That's the heckler's veto.
It's so
everywhere.
frustrating. I mean, I had a friend of mine and a load of, I won't say who it was, but a load of Palestinian protesters came to his office and he walked out and said, I've literally resigned in support of your cause. Yeah. Come in and have a meeting with me. And they're going, free, Palestine. He's going, no, just come in. And then after an hour and a half, he went, right, I've got to pick my kids up from school. You're not listening to us. How dare you? You're boo. He literally sat in his office, mate.
But if you take a microphone and go in and ask some of these people the detail of the issue about which they're protesting, too often they have no idea.
I mean, I do think that. I do wonder whether the reason the milkshake gets thrown because they didn't have anything to say. But OK, Tom, has the University of Liverpool... True or false?
I think this one's true. I'd be surprised if it was false.
Yes, it is absolutely true and depressing.
That was The Woke That Was. Continues after the break.
Hello and welcome back. That was The Woke That Was. We've got the Free Speech Union in with Tom Harris. We've got Nick Clegg's former special advisor, James McGory, and we've got Pete Barnes. OK.
Didn't have enough time for gorgeous. They're very lovely.
The lovely... Do you know what?
Cuddly.
I'm going to say this to everyone. We received an email from Pete 3 weeks ago where he said, from now on, I'd like to be known as a political strategist, not a political analyst. What is the difference between a strategist and an analyst?
It's a small promotion.
He promoted himself.
After the things I've been put through on this show. Cake in the face.
Actually,
selfies.
In truth, you're not an analyst, you are a strategist.
I'm a strategist by trade, yes.
Joe Biden has spent $50 million on a new advertising campaign labelling Trump a convicted criminal. Is it true or is it false?
I've seen this advert, and I must say it is very, very powerful. It's not really a thing in this country, mainly because you're not allowed to advertise on television. But American attack ads, if you're a bit of a political geek like I am, are amazing.
Yes.
If I was in America, I'd support the Democrats, no doubt about it. But both sides I'm fascinated by because they do not pull their punches. You cannot believe they're allowed to do this.
I love it where it goes. Bob McGuire attacked the family with his voting record. Bill Jones opposed it. Paid for by Bill Jones. It's so good.
The fact that they have to put the disclaimer in at the end and they have a race against time to who can possibly say it the quickest. I approve this message. But if you're into politics in this country, I find it amazing. Actually, not a big fan of it that you are allowed to pump in such one-sided stuff into people's homes on a night-by-night basis. Whether it's $50 million, I don't know. But that, to me, seems too low. Given you talk about super PACs with billion dollar budgets, the amount of money they spend, that's where the most of their spend...
That's why you need the money, don't you, in America?
That's where most
get nowhere without
That's where the most of the spend comes from. And also, they do it at different levels. Your governor will do it. Your House of Rep will do it. Your senator will do it. The presidential candidates will do it. It's phenomenal. But they spend money on a production.
That is perhaps what our American audience, which is now 50% of the audience... Love that. That's probably what they won't understand about this general election, that most individual candidates in most parties, including the big ones, will not spend up to their campaign limit. Because
which are very, very low as well.
There's nothing to spend it on.
When I went to America as a kid, the first thing I noticed was not just political ads, but also your normal everyday commercials, where they really monster the competition. This is the ultimate capitalism. This is our soda pop. And it's much better than the soda pop that they do round. And I thought that's really weird.
It was like
have they started to do it here a bit?
It was like with the Daz Doorstep Challenge. The other brand,
leading household brand.
The other leading household brand just had a white box.
That doesn't look like a leading household brand to me.
Well, what is that? Where do you get that? They knock on the door and they're there in a ball gown. Oh, what a surprise!
I wasn't expecting you.
Dressing gown and a full face of makeup.
Because what I do when I buy my washing up powder is the first thing I do is paper white paper all over it so you can't tell what brand it is. Then I write the words leading household brand. And then I do all my makeup and wear a ball gown just in case Danny Baker knocks on the door.
But that's perfectly normal, Andre. We all do that.
Absolutely. OK, James. Joe Biden, $50 million on an attack ad. True or false?
False, because it was more money.
It wasn't. It was $50 million. So it's absolutely true. So to Tom, a BBC reporter has sparked controversy. True.
I got in trouble for doing that.
Why am I reading that? What's the point? OK, let's go through
read it out.
Let's go through the motions. Right. If we had to guess true or false on the BBC, there'd be no show. True. Very true.
Very true.
A BBC reporter sparked controversy after criticising D-Day veterans for their lack of diversity.
Oh, Lord. I mean...
Somebody criticised the film Dunkirk when they said there weren't many black or Asian people in the film. Yes, there's a reason for that.
It's just astonishing, isn't it? One of the most important moments in British history, D-Day, and then celebrating it or remembering it since then, it's being brought into these culture wars and being sort of dragged in, kicking and screaming.
You had a very successful career in the city, right? And then you decided to give it up for a great job, but it's fair to say a less well-paid job at the Free Speech Union.
If Toby's watching, it's...
I mean, does D-Day still connect with you?
Yes.
As something... Do you see that as a war for freedom?
100%. It was a war for the whole heart and soul of Europe and for the heart and soul of the whole world.
Humanity.
It was an incredible moment, and my grandparents fought in it. And when I see the D-Day veterans, I think of my grandparents and my friends' grandparents, or great-grandparents now, because people are getting younger and younger. And I think, wow, that they represent so much.
I got into trouble when I worked in Parliament because it's fair to say that I don't think most people looking at me would realise that I'm half Greek. Right.
I think that's safe to say, Andre.
So I mentioned in front of people that two of my great uncles died in the battle for Thessalonica between the Greeks and the Germans, and I think it's fair to say they assumed that. So literally, people walked off thinking, well, he's quite proudly saying his uncle's with the Waffen-SS. But not ideal.
I mean, the film Saving Private Ryan, I think, really brought it home. And again, people probably don't even remember that film nowadays.
No. People people say who were at D-Day, that's what it was actually like.
Yeah, and the first 10 minutes of that
10
film
minutes of that
are just
film.
astonishing. You know, sometimes you just
The rest
can't watch it.
Yeah, the rest ain't that great.
No.
A serious point for a minute, if I may, that you're in a really important part of these memorials now. Because there's not going to be very long left where there are people who can remember them, fought in them, or even can remember them happening from home, even as children.
Yes.
And then it'll always be part of history, and quite rightly so. But then we will be teaching it without any personal direct standpoint. So I think we've really got to enjoy it. And I really like this 80th anniversary set of celebrations or commemorations, because they were really, really well done. And it brought home to you that these guys they're not going to be around for much longer.
You and I, well, in fact, all of us have been through this already with the First World War. And the fact that there was a moment where you said, well, in reality, we're not going to do this again. And I just wonder whether we can keep the memory of this alive. Because, you know, whatever way you look at it, the battle for freedom in the Second World War in particular was so important for humanity.
And the Battle of Waterloo now was closer to the beginning of the First World War than today.
Wow.
Oh, God.
Isn't it?
Made me feel old there,
1815, 1915, 2015. I mean, it's just astonishing, isn't it?
No.
And that's what will happen. The First World War will go back to...
That's an interesting fact, but I feel ancient now. Well, I just want to put, with what you said about them being dragged into this culture wars, I think you are right. It annoys me no end. These things should be above that kind of politics.
Like the king is above.
Yeah, and like it should just be above it. And it annoys me no end that, you know, people use veterans as a political weapon. I know we're in the middle of a general election and everything is kind of fair game, but let's be real. We have a major problem with how we treat our former armed service personnel.
Without a doubt.
You know, homelessness, mental health, job opportunities, training, you know, issues within the army and the armed services itself. And yet, when these issues become, you know, we actually have to do something, where is everybody's outrage? Again, it's about getting that level of perspective again. That, you know, yes, these commemorations are important, but there is also living service personnel now that also need some help. Yeah. And I just think
do you think, Pete, just to develop that, do you think that sometimes we wear a poppy, turn up once a year, and then say, who gives a toss for the rest of the year?
I don't just think it's Poppy Day. I think there's lots of issues where we do that. I think people hyper care and then don't care at all. You know, and it's one of the reasons I have very little sympathy for because we're in the middle of Pride Month right now. Every company loves Pride. Oh, gay's great. Where were you when two guys got stabbed outside a nightclub? Well, you know, I
have to say one thing, and I, you know, this might be controversial. We've got to move on now, but I have to say this whole gay pride thing, which appears to be an opportunity for companies to shine up their image, which I can't detect any connection whatsoever with the rights or indeed the lifestyles of gay people. But anyway, there we have it. So Tom has a BBC reporter sparked controversy after criticising D-Day veterans for their lack of diversity. Is it true or false?
I want to say that has to be false. I want to say that has to be false.
And you know something? But to be fair to the BBC... Oh, hang on. Was there a but?
There was a but. OK, I'm going to say it's false. You gave
the game away there,
All right. Because I read it wrong, I'm going to give you that. On this occasion, the BBC are not in the wrong. It is, in fact, false.
That was The Woke That Was. Continues after the break. Welcome back to That Was The Woke That Was.
OK, so our final question goes to Peter.
Yeah.
Japan has a whopping 97% rejection rate for illegal migrants. Is it true or is it false?
Wow. If that is true, I mean, can they come over here and run the Home Office? That would be fantastic.
No, nobody can run the Home Office. We've established that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a report out this week that said I think we've now hit 40,000 people have entered the UK through the small boats alone. That's we're at
3% of the UK population didn't live here 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, that is quite big.
Yeah, we talk about, obviously, it's a lot more complex, the immigration issue, than just the small boats. But the reason we hyper-focus on this one is because it's a physical thing you can see much more than people overstaying visas are. It's why it's become such a big topic. But, you know, I do think we have to look around the world and say that, you know, other countries are better at this than we are. And maybe we should adopt some of their policies. I'm not saying 97% is the right number to have, but, you know, we can have that conversation. But we have to, and I go back to the point you always make, Andre, you have to make a choice between having things like the NHS, things like the social services and all the rest of it, and having uncontrolled immigration. Yeah. Because you cannot have both. You simply can't.
I will tell you,
you can't.
We were talking about the war. My granddad lived in Japan for 3 years. Yeah. Let me tell you, he has no intention of ever returning to that country. That was not the most enjoyable 3 years of his life, I can assure you.
Was it during the war? Right?
Yeah. Yes, he lived in Japan from 1942 to 1945.
Got it.
I will tell you, I mean, I don't think we'd be able to broadcast his views. It's fair to say he's not keen. He's not keen.
Exactly. But we used to be a lot better at it and a lot clearer on immigration. Just one generation of politicians ago, it was perfectly possible to say that if something's illegal, if people are coming in against the law, then we will apply the law. We do apply borders. And it seems that conversation...
James, presumably, I'm just assuming that you are generally fairly positive about sensible immigration. How do we get that balance right?
I'm very positive about sensible immigration, as I think most people in this country are. Yeah. I genuinely think across look, there's lunatics on all sides, right? But generally, I think people want a system that they regard as firm but fair.
Yeah. Do we have a system?
You can't. We have had in the past, and it's been lost control of. Really, it was bad to start with, but after Brexit, we were told it's going to bring down immigration massively because you're not having immigrants from the EU. Well, actually, it's nearly doubled.
But do you know my theory on Brexit, right? I've never told you this before, but here's my theory. When the EU used to say Britain can't rule itself, we thought they were making a generic point about the size of our nation. What we hadn't realised was they'd actually met people in Westminster and were literally saying, no, we've met them. Trust me, you can't run your own affairs.
I actually think the reason I think that things have all gone to chaos is we don't use the right terminology when it comes to the immigration debate. So most people couldn't tell you the difference between a refugee, an asylum seeker, an economic migrant.
That's right.
And I think because we just kind of lump it all together, it's lacked that nuance. And because we've had no nuance, any policy or any system that we've tried to put in place just doesn't work. And I do also put it down to the fact that the system that we have got is not fit for purpose. You know, if we look at these kind of asylum interviews...
Is it even a system?
Well, I'm trying to think of a better word.
The problem is with it, I mean, you know, in this general election, there is a debate about immigration, and that's fine. And some people are more in favour of it, some people are more against it. But there is a basic point here that it is questionable as to whether whatever your policy is, the Home Office can deliver it.
Yes.
And I'm just not sure they can.
Well, I totally agree. But we do have a debate about immigration, but too often it gets down to people just literally shouting, it should be lower, this number, that number. I honestly don't think it's helpful. Seriously tell me which of the political parties have set out a system for how they're going to reform the system, right, to actually make it work, to actually get rid of this backlog for different types of immigrants. What are they going to do if you think a million's too high, and a lot of people do, and that's not an unreasonable point of view, then how are you going to structurally make changes to that? I don't think anyone's setting that out, and instead we just get into a very, very shouty debate about numbers. And I fail to see who that.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll give you this advice for nothing. The very simple solution is you can't solve it when people are here. You've got to work with France, and you've got to do something on the channel. Yeah. Because the reality is, when people are here, it becomes absolutely impossible. And then, and this is one thing that I will say is not their fault, somebody's here for bloody 15 years and has now had 2 kids. Throwing them out then becomes unreasonable, even though they shouldn't be here. And then you're completely lost.
But there's this weird assumption, going back to your point, that we, the general public, cannot appreciate the nuance of the debate. So we're not allowed to have a nuanced debate, or at least we're not given a platform. There is no platform where these things get thrashed out. It's only recently that we've been able to talk about multiculturalism and say, well, maybe there are elements of multiculturalism that haven't worked. Yeah. You know, it's brought lots of good stuff, but it's also brought all these problems. But the problem, how do we deal with those?
The issue is, though, is that the minute you try to bring up, say, a kind of negative, not negative, but say a contrary opinion to, say, multiculturalism or immigration, you're a racist, you're a xenophobe, you're this. The debate is shut down. It's not that we can't have a nuanced debate. There is no debate.
But
that's a big point.
Which is really worrying.
This is the bit that I don't understand about immigration, right? My grandmother came over from Greece because she thought Greece was crap. Now, at the end of the day, her brother didn't, and that's why he remained in Greece. But this whole idea where you come over from a country and say, we hate being in Pakistan, but we're going to set up Pakistan in Britain, I think this whole cultural, multicultural thing is nonsense. My grandmother left Greece because she thought Greece was rubbish. If she thought it was marvellous, she should have stayed there.
Yeah.
That's the bit I don't get.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I'm sure I've made this point before, is that the way we talk about culture is wrong. It's not just food and languages and religions.
Yes.
It's also political opinions. It's views on minorities. It's lots of other bits that we don't talk about.
It's views on minorities, yeah. Well, I agree, yeah. It's the Mayor of Wigan. He says, being from Oral, you are in a minority in Wigan because you can't eat pies effectively as the rest of them. OK, so we're going to ask you, has Japan rejected 97% of illegal migrants? Is it true or is it false?
I would say it's true.
It's absolutely true. And now, in terms of who is the winner, I'm going to go through the scores. Pete Barnes has got 8,568 points. Tom Harris has got 9,526. But Rory McGory, James McGory has got £8 and a bag of concealer, and that is more than points. And so he is the winner. Congratulations to James McGory. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, goodbye.